this is a launch that I've been particularly excited about, and looking forward to getting stuck in to the work of the Taskforce. But thanks too to the GEFI team, because so often launches like this, which are public and high profile, come off the back of years, sometimes decades, but certainly years of hard work in small corners trying to get initiatives off the ground. And the GEFI team are certainly to be credited for bringing us to this point. Their work has placed Scotland at the very heart of the revolution, of the green, sustainable and ethical finance revolution. And we're certainly immensely proud that GEFI have chosen to make Scotland their home, because so many of their goals align with our ambitions, the Scottish Government's ambitions for our financial services industry and the wider economy. But certainly a very sincere welcome to everybody joining virtually today in Scotland. And it gives me great pleasure to highlight what our hopes and ambitions for this task force. And the Taskforce mission is actually remarkably simple. It's to set out clearly, tangibly, what action Scotland's need to take to finance a just transition at home, and secondly, to build on our existing strengths as a leading European financial hub, to leverage that domestic leadership in pursuit of new, high growth, export-oriented jobs in a greener financial services industry. It doesn't need to be said, but we know the transition to a net zero economy will be a monumental undertaking. It's going to be the single greatest social and economic transformation required, perhaps in history, and it's going to impact every sector of the economy. No part of our economy, no part of our society will be immune to the impact of that transformation. And at its heart, it's going to require the reallocation of trillions of pounds of capital. And I said at the beginning, I'm ambitious for Scotland. I want to position Scotland as a place that helps solve the financial problems of the transition, a place which connects, adopts, aligns values, vision, and the ability to deliver it. And I'm certainly convinced that although the task is monumental, it's achievable. Not just achievable because it needs to be done, but achievable if we look at the fact that so much of the resource, so much of the talent, so much of the commitment is here already. And we know how important finance is to prosperity and sustainability, and one of Scotland's fundamental economic strengths. One of our fundamental economic strengths for centuries has been our financial services industry. And I'm certainly lucky enough to see every day how this sector is a bedrock on which our economy is built. I want it to succeed nationally and internationally, not just because it's good for our economy, but because if we are to succeed when it comes to net zero, we need our financial services sector to succeed. To deliver the transition to net zero in the manner and the pace that we need, to do that, we need to harness the innovation, the creativity and the skills of this industry, to work with governments, the regulatory community, business, to channel capital towards decarbonisation, towards adaptation and towards resilience. And so the establishment of this task force does just that. It brings together leaders from industry, the regulatory community, government, academia, individuals who are eager to get involved and who recognise how big a need this is for all of humanity, but also, being clear, how big an opportunity it is for Scotland. And I think the launch of this task force certainly could not be better timed. And I'm delighted to be here at its public launch, because the decisions that this task force makes will have an impact over the coming years. And ultimately, its success will have a critical bearing on how we transition to a net zero carbon economy and whether we make the most of the opportunities ahead. We were obviously very proud that COP26 in Glasgow was one of perhaps the most significant conferences ever hosted by this country. And Scotland's COP26 saw more than 4,000 businesses commit to aligning their business models within that 1.5 degrees target and net zero emissions by 2050 by signing up to the UNFCCC's Race to Zero campaign. And Mark, who I'm looking forward to hearing shortly, set out in Venice in summer 2021 that we won't get to net zero in a niche. Rather, virtually every company in every sector needs to transform its business model, requiring investments of over $100 trillion in the next 3 decades. And as Mark has previously articulated so well, if we get this right, we could turn an existential risk into the greatest commercial opportunity of our time. And I go back to my theme in my opening remarks. I'm ambitious for Scotland. If this is the greatest commercial opportunity of our time, off the back of COP26 allowing us to showcase and be the platform for these opportunities, I want to ensure that the Scottish financial services sector, which for centuries has been at the bedrock of transformation, of revolution, is right at the heart of these opportunities. And GFANZ obviously was created to meet these needs, these global needs, bringing together over 250 financial institutions responsible for over $130 trillion of assets and anchored in the COP's Race to Zero. It's a roadmap for what the financial sector must do if we are to achieve sustainability. And here in Scotland, we want that task force to develop our route map that's complementary, that is anchored in GFANZ, but also recognises how Scotland can not just participate and contribute, but glean some of the opportunities and the benefits. This coalition of coalitions promising systematic, comprehensive, science-based, measurable, transparent and time-bound action bears the name of Glasgow, Scotland's biggest city. And our challenge now is to ensure that we live up to the promise of COP26, both in our domestic commitments and our global potential to make a difference. Like every politician, I can deliver the rhetoric and I can lay out my ambition, but it remains nothing but an ambition without tangible action. And that tangible action is where we need to focus our attention now. We need tangible action like launching Scotland's green investment portfolio, bringing together market-ready projects worth £3 billion this year, covering sectors from environmental, sustainable, commercial real estate to low-emission transportation and zero and green energy. But what's next? What are the tangible actions required to take to ensure that we're delivering on that ambition? GEFI's Path to COP26 programme set out clearly that nature is climate, climate is nature. We want to be at the frontier of deploying disclosure frameworks like the TCFD and in the development of initiatives like TNFD, which will both raise the risk profile and shift funding towards climate and nature positive economic activity. In Scotland, we're building the institutional foundations of a system that's able to seize the opportunities of transitioning to net zero. We know we need to mobilise our finances to fund that domestic transition. We know we need to meet it with projects and companies that can make use of the finances to drive the pace to net zero. So how do we do that? We need to encourage that drive, that aim, that goal to think bigger, better, fairer, greener, whilst providing the opportunity and headspace for companies to develop and share their innovative ideas. So what's my role? What's the role of government in all of this? Well, the role of government is to try and create certainty for investors. And to do that, we have to understand the world from their perspective, and the Taskforce will clearly help with that. It's clear to me that financial services and public, and more importantly, private investment have a vital role to play, not just on the journey to net zero and in helping to build greener, more resilient economies, but also in promoting a world where purposeful companies can pursue profit in a way which helps us to build a fairer, more sustainable world, one which is part of the solution to the problems we face. And certainly there's no end to the problems which face the world. prosperity, fairness, global warming, human rights, diversity, and many other problems that are perhaps at top of our minds on a day like today. But ultimately, purposeful companies which help preserve the natural world that ultimately serves communities. And in a sense, the role of the finance industry is simple. It's to take money, our savings, and invest them where they're needed, where they can make a genuine return. And there's certainly never been a more important time to do that job well. So David, as I come to a close, in setting out certainly what my ambitions on behalf of the Scottish Government are, ambitions I know that are shared by members on the Taskforce, as well as representatives of the financial services sector in Scotland. I want to close just by expressing my thanks to all members of the Taskforce and to you, David, for chairing it, to GEFI, to Mark, John, and Dame Susan, who have joined us today. We appreciate your commitment to this project and your commitment to Scotland. I know we share the same determination to strengthen Scotland's capabilities to mobilise and deploy capital on our domestic transition, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because we want to be at the heart, as we have so often been at the heart of previous revolutions and transformations. And the Taskforce leadership will help us both globally as well as help Scotland domestically to take a competitive position. And I certainly look forward to receiving the Taskforce's recommendations. I have no doubt they will be challenging and ambitious, but that's what we need. We need the tangible action that will meet the high ambitions we have set, not just for Scotland, not just for financial services, but indeed for the world to transition to net zero. Thanks very much, David.